Good evening and welcome to Enemy Within. It's Tuesday the 10th of November and we've got something a bit different for you this Tuesday night. Start of a new venture and always like to see something new coming on. And we've got a special monthly programme from Mickey Summers and Mark Fragz Smith called One Step Beyond. So take it away, Nutty Boys.
Yeah, good evening everyone, and we've got a good show for you this evening. Got a very special guest that's connected to the National Enquiry into historic establishment childhood abuse, and I've had the privilege of being around Chris for a little while now, and it's a real privilege to have her on board. And I think with that, I'm going to leave it to Chris to introduce herself and maybe give her a bit of information about what she's done to date and where she hopes that this major inquiry will go. With that, it's over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Mickey. Well, my story in a nutshell is I was abused in my own home by my parents and my step-parents. So the abuse went on from the age of 7 to the age of 15, physical, mental, emotional and sexual abuse. I have actually written a book about it to help other people. There's no profit from the book. It's just out there to help people understand what victims and survivors go through and the impact that it has on us for a lifetime. So I'm all about raising awareness of the impacts of abuse, and I'm all about trying to get victims and survivors the support, the specialist support that they need to live a normal life. That's what I'm all about. I actually qualified as an accountant so that I could have stability and money in my life so that I could then bring children into the world, because I never had that when I was growing up. I had a breakdown when I was 30 because the child abuse, what I went through, caught up with me and it affected me and my mental health. And that forced me to change careers, and I become a fitness instructor and now a health coach. So I use mindset, nutrition and fitness to make people well again, especially victims and survivors. I became involved in the inquiry because I felt I could help shape the inquiry on using my own experience. Now, I am not speaking on behalf of all victims and survivors because every single one of us is unique and we've all got different experiences, but I'm hoping that my specific experiences will help and is shaping the inquiry so that it is for the benefit of all victims and survivors. Does that make sense?
It does, Chris, yeah. That's quite epic what you've just explained there, I must admit. You've obviously empowered yourself there while that, going through the hardship you've had to put up with, obviously. Just going back a little bit on what you said there, this book that you've written, do you want to just tell us what that book's called and maybe where people get hold of it if they're interested?
Yeah, sure. It is called Through the Eyes of a Child and is on Amazon. Of course, people do have to pay for it, but all the funding that the book raises goes straight back into the charity that is being set up to help victims and survivors. So I am not making a penny from this book other than covering my costs. So I just want to clear that up, okay? But my brothers and my sister have all written a chapter in this book. So it shows the impact on just not females but males as well, and what we've all been through and how it's affected each of us in different ways.
Hats off to you there. What we've done, we've kind of let people know that you was coming on tonight, Chris.
Yeah.
And very, very briefly explained who you are and everything. And we've had a few questions put in, and
okay.
One's been put to us. And it's basically, with you being on the panel, which I'd like to go into a bit more if you will. One of the questions is, someone's been dropped from the survivors panel on the Godard inquiry. The name's Peter McKelvey. Now, apparently it's been, I kind of we picked it up that there was a conflict of interest because he's being brought as a witness within the Godard inquiry. So there's a conflict of interest there, so they can't be on the panel, as we understand it. Please put us right.
No.
So the question is this person off the survivors panel going to be replaced or anything like that? How does it work as well? I mean, if you could just iterate a little bit on that, how it works, because I'm not 100% of how that panel works myself. So it'd be great if you could give us an insight, please, Chris.
Okay, at the moment, the VSCP is all about shaping the inquiry from the point of victims and survivors. Okay, so we are being consulted on with regards to anything like the Truth Project that's happening, any material that comes out of the inquiry to make sure that it is survivor friendly, so that, you know, they have our input into what they're saying, so that it is, as I said, more friendly towards victims and survivors, so people can understand the media that surrounds the inquiry and how they can get more involved. So that is our role at the moment, but it is developing as the inquiry develops. What we've got to remember is that this inquiry is such a massive thing, and it's never been done before on this scale. So everybody's learning as they go along, and we on the panel at the moment are still learning our actual role as we go along. It's going to evolve and it's going to develop, but at the moment a lot of time is being spent on putting the infrastructure together on how we actually engage with victims and survivors into the inquiry. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, we're getting, obviously, the chat room, some questions coming through in the chat room as well here. I mean, as you probably understand, the public in general, I mean, there's people who are, like, you know, they're happy this is happening at last, and some people are thinking it's a bit of a sham, you know, the cover-up potential, the people involved, also the amount of people who were brought forward to host it. But you see, I mean, I have heard a few people mention this. If it was going to be a full inquiry, how come Kincora and de Legrand is not being part of it? I mean, that is a question that I've heard from a lot of people that has a lot of head scratching. I don't know if you give us any insight on that, please, Chris.
Again, I didn't set the terms of reference from
the inquiry.
Of course. The judge did.
It's just generally what people are asking the questions, you know.
Again, I haven't got an answer for Kincora and Haute Le Garenne. I really don't. I just don't have an answer for that because I didn't set the terms of reference for the inquiry up.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, up in Nottingham when we met with them, the policymakers and one of the secretaries, we had a few things that we ran by, and I don't know what your view is, but where they've got Operation Hydrant involved in the stuff that concerns police investigations, you know, I have serious issues about it goes round in a circular thing back to the original police force that people are actually making issues with, as we are in Nottingham. You know, my personal view that we put across, and we put it across quite harshly, is that we need the National Crime Agency because a lot of these police forces have been involved previously and they failed. You know, so why should they get another chance? You know, we need transparency, and I believe that every chance that we could get it. But only with people like yourself on that panel to try and steer it in the right directions.
I think it's just worth mentioning as well for the listeners with Chris. With Chris being on the survivors panel, she's quite restricted to really go into too much detail about that for obvious reasons. So I just thought I'd make that known. I mean, Chris isn't holding back. You know, it's there is a reason why she can't go into too much detail. Thanks.
But from my perspective, though, I mean, since I've been putting stuff out this past 18, 20 months, you know, I've done quite a few of these rallies up and down the country, and I have to say that one of the most informative was the one that you put on along with Chris Whitwer earlier this year. You know, it actually put out a lot of information to a lot of people that really weren't in the know about it, you know, and for that, we have to applaud what you've done, Chris.
Mickey, all I can say is that I applied to be on the VSCP because I felt I could make a difference internally, not just externally. Yeah, there are many people like yourself that are doing a fantastic job on the outside. I don't see that would be me to be best placed to be doing that on the outside. I think that I'm the better place to help from the inside, and together we can make a big difference. And again, I can't talk about the mechanics of what's going on inside the inquiry because I want to stay on the panel, but I am going to do my damnedest to represent victims and survivors from the outside, and if you've got any issues, obviously take them back to the inquiry. But you guys, you can talk to the inquiry direct yourself, okay? That's not a problem, but I am here to make sure that the inquiry, as well as the rest of the VSCP members, do the job that it was set up to do. So you can be rest assured that we've got everybody's best interests at heart, and I really, really do want to put that out there. Okay. Someone said, so will McKelvey be replaced on the panel? Kaz, at the moment, I can't tell you yes or no. Peter McKelvey, is going to be a key witness in the inquiry going forward, and people will keep saying, you know, conflict of interest, that should not be present. So that is why Peter McKelvey, resigned from the panel, because he's going to be a key witness. The inquiry is trying to be as transparent as it can be, and again, lots of people are going to say, well, actually, it's not. But I can assure you, as much as possible, it is being transparent, and going forwards, the VSCP's job is to try and make sure that it stays transparent.
Can I ask you there, please, Chris?
Yeah.
How does it work? How people would not necessarily apply, but how does the evidence work? I mean, because I remember a good few months ago now, and I was picking up a lot of wording and people saying like survivors won't be directly represented. Now, since that time, I'm aware a lot of work has been done to make sure survivors do get a direct connection into the Godard inquiry, because in the beginning there was trying to keep survivors away from it. So basically, how is that working? I mean, so if you collate evidence? I mean, could you explain how the process works within the panel that you're on, please?
Okay, me personally, no, we go nowhere near victims and survivors and evidence. We don't go nowhere near that. That's the job of the main panel, which is the judge and the other 4 panel members, and the lawyers, if the testimonies or accounts from survivors go to the panel. So, and then with the permission of the participants, it may be escalated up to Operation Hydrant. But again, the specifics of how that all works will come out from the main inquiry website in the next few weeks. But I myself, when I shared my story with the inquiry, I went via the website and submitted it via Share Your Experience. That's how I submitted mine.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, because I mean, I don't really watch mainstream TV much, and I must admit, maybe because of that, I've not picked up on how it works. But I mean, there's lots of evidence out there that the number of survivors really is hundreds of thousands. I mean, so I'm trying to think, because obviously this is my lack of knowledge speaking here, so hence me asking you the question. Is it an effective role that has been provided within the Godard inquiry, which you being one of the people who took up that role or chosen, or?
Sorry, what is your question?
I mean, is it an effective role that the Godard inquiry has given to survivors on the panel? I mean, have you got enough powers to make that difference?
The difference we make is by giving our experiences. That is the difference. So I'm no better than any other survivor out there, and I've never ever said that. I've just am a survivor, like most people out there, and who've got an experience to share. And that is helped shape the material and the literature that's come from out of the inquiry so far and will in future. and hopefully will help people engage with the inquiry, because they have got the VSCP panel there to help them understand what is trying to happen with the inquiry. So where's like? Sorry.
Thanks for that, because that's an insight I've not had before. Thank you.
One question that came to me, Chris, from a few sources is about the NSPCC being involved in this inquiry. I mean, they're part of the establishment to me, and I have some serious reservations that I believe there should be a totally independent body set up for this. What is your view on that?
What, to run the helpline, Mickey? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, the long-term helpline is being put out to tender to, other agencies. So it will be put out to tender like any other contract, and then other, people can apply to take that helpline over. I believe that the NSPCC was a short-term, arrangement so that the helpline could be got up and running.
Right. What part does the Home Affairs Select Committee play in the inquiry?
You know what, Mickey? I haven't got a clue. As far as I know, they don't.
Right.
I just know that, like, when Tom Watson was interviewed, like 2 weeks ago now, I think they are able to call meetings and interviews when they want on anything that politically is happening. So, as far as I'm aware, they have no role in the inquiry, because the inquiry is independent of everything. Right.
Now, there's just a few points aimed at me over the last couple of weeks, and I was asked to ask what, if anything, you're aware of, because a lot of people got issues over that Home Affairs Select Committee, notably because of what happened with Tom Watson recently, and the fact that Keith Vaz is actually on that panel, and we all know the history of Keith Vaz and his connections to Jana, and I would have reservations as a fellow survivor, but if at some point you do get some information on that, I'm sure we'll be able to get you back on to give us an update.
If there's stuff I can share with you, then of course, but I understand people's concerns about Keith Vaz and the Home Affairs Select Committee, but as far as I know, they have nothing to do with the inquiry whatsoever.
Right.
Is there any way, Chris, that if they was to try and influence this out of the channels that you've clearly explained, is there any way you would find out? Is the what's the word I'm looking for? Is there a protection for you guys being kept in the light? Is I don't want. I mean, there's a lot of people. I must admit, I've been one of them where, when there's a charity involved like NSPCC and they're filtering, it looks like they're filtering and stuff like that. There's a lot of insecurities with survivors who I know.
Yeah, I understand that. All I can say is that I've met the judge on many occasions now, and she is absolutely, and again, people are going to have different views on this, but she is absolutely adamant that we're going to uncover the extent of the abuse. We're going to uncover the failure of the institutions. We are going to put forward resolutions to this, and we are going to make sure that no stone is unturned. I say we, the inquiry. That's what I mean by all of this, guys, okay? And I absolutely 100% believe in the judge, even if some of the victims and survivors out there don't. I believe that she's going to deliver on her promises, and I also believe that she is not going to have her head turned by anybody. This is an independent inquiry, and I honestly 100% firmly believe that. And if anything, like you said, does happen, I think we would learn about it, and I think we would stand up in favour of all victims and survivors and say, this is not on, and if that happens, make a judgment.
Sorry to jump in there, Chris. So have you got any powers at all then to keep the separation of powers in the right place, being on that panel?
I don't know what you mean about powers. It is completely outside of this. It's not the HASAC are not part of the inquiry. So I haven't got any powers to keep it separate, but they are not part of the inquiry. It's already set up. The inquiry is completely separate and independent.
Right, okay, thanks.
And it has its own statutory powers to call people to bear witness to what is happening or has happened.
So what do you see happening with this? And how long do you think this would go on? Because it's absolutely historically epic in the sense this has never happened before in this country ever.
You know what? As I said at the beginning, this is such a huge undertaking. Yeah. I've heard, like everybody else, that this inquiry is going to be, 4 to 5 years long? Okay, and I haven't heard anything outside of that, and this is what everybody's heard. All right?
So very much early days then from the position that you're in. Is that fair to say then, Chris?
Yeah, that is fair to say, but that's what I've heard, is that it's going to be 4 to 5 years long, like everybody else. And what I'm hoping to get from this, like everybody else out there, is that we've been through hell, and we want to protect children of tomorrow. So by learning what's happened, we can make sure that it doesn't happen in the future, but we need tougher sentencing for abusers. We need legislative changes so that children are protected. We need specialist support services available to all victims and survivors, because we all know it's inadequate. And I don't know about you, but I still suffer from PTSD. I still suffer from lots of things. And, it's only through therapy that I actually pay for myself, and lots of people are not in that position to actually get therapy because they can't afford it, that I am able to carry on and live a happy and healthy life. And I want that for all victims and all survivors of childhood abuse.
I have a question, Chris, that you talk about therapeutic services.
Yeah.
What is there going to be put in place, if anything, to ensure that, like, I'm going to use Nottingham for example, where we've got currently around 300 survivors that are going to be coming into the inquiry. What powers would the Godard inquiry have to enforce the councils, like, to actually put that stuff in place? Because to go through the National Health Service, you're talking about a GP sending a letter out, then waiting about 6 weeks and hopefully getting an assessment and then put on a waiting list. There is nothing out there other than the private sector that I personally have been in for the last year.
Mickey, again, I absolutely agree with you, because that's been my experience, is the 6-week waiting list. And the thing is, when you disclose, you're often in crisis, aren't you? Yeah. And you need immediate support. Again, all I know is that when you engage with the inquiry, the support is going to be there. So when you come to the inquiry, so say like you're coming to the Truth Project, support will be given to you whilst you are engaging with the inquiry. And afterwards, you will be referred to the local support services. And our argument is that those support services are underfunded and not readily available. And we are pushing that point home time and time again. So all I can do is keep you updated on that. But as far as the inquiry having power over councils to provide that, I have not got a clue. But again, I can put that question forward and ask it for you.
Yes, we would really be obliged on that. Anything else that's kind of been raised, what you might have seen in the chat room, we will invite you back at some point. And obviously we will liaise with you to try and keep our finger on the pulse. But I'm aware of the fact that you've got something that you previously got arranged for the evening, and we're more than grateful that you've been able to take your time out tonight. And we wish you all the luck in the future, and just keep on keeping on and doing what you're doing, Chris, because we all love what you've done for survivors, like in the time that I've known you. And for me, it was a pleasure to have you on board tonight.
Thanks, Mickey. Look, can I just say one last thing, right? I know there's lots of people that don't have trust in this because of everything that they've been through, and I absolutely understand that 100%. But this inquiry is going to make a big difference. Everybody that's working on it feels that they can make a big difference for victims and survivors. So we've just got to build that trust slowly. We've got to show that the inquiry is robust and independent. And as more and more people come forward and take part in the inquiry and see the developments of the inquiry, so it's going to take time. I get that. But all I can say is that everybody working on it and in it are doing their best that they can do.
Right.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
It'd be great to speak to you again.
Yeah, no worries, guys, no worries.
We're going to love you and leave you because we know you're busy.
All right.
What we're going to do is we're going to put a song on now. We'll just have a couple of minutes. So,
okay.
As Andy says, if you need a little boys' room, now's about the time.
Thanks, Chris.
No worries, thank you.
This tune's by Paul Simon.
Come on, Andy.
Right, welcome back, everybody. Right, our second guest for tonight is David Hollas. David is the chairman for the Nottingham CSA Enquiry Action Group. And they've all kind of really got a hell of a lot of leeway, in my personal opinion, over the last, at least, well, getting up for 2 years at least. It's brought Nottingham to the forefront. A lot of groups around the country, but me personally, I think Nottingham has really made the biggest leeway. Good evening, David.
Hello, how are you?
Not too bad, nice to speak to you again.
Yeah, and you?
Good. Many people might not know who you are, David. You have got quite a bright past behind you. I was just wondering if you would be ever so modest and and give us a bit of your background and what's kind of led you to the role you took on board these days now with the Nottingham CSA Enquiry Action Group, please.
Oh, okay. Well, I come from a family with little imagination, so, you know, my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, myself, and now my son are all kind of the military profession and profession of arms. And I completed 35 years a couple of years ago, and came out. And I suppose I came, you know, so that's my background. It's a military background. I come from a military family. I was a military brat, as my father was, etc. So it wasn't a great surprise that, you know, I followed in that particular footsteps. I had a great career, great time, great people. Came out, settled back in Nottingham, which was my mother's home, even though she met my father in Libya. And I still have family around here, so it was a kind of sensible place to come back to. Anyway, where did I get involved in this particular battle? Because I kind of came across an angry ex-squaddy standing on a corner of a street shouting in the wilderness. And I said to him, look, I'm not sure what I can do, but if there's anything I can do, give me a shout. And unfortunately, he did. So I kind of thought, well, you know, he doesn't need me to stand alongside him shouting in the wilderness. Perhaps could probably engage the kind of authorities, because I have a background of working at that sort of level in the Monastery of Diffidence. So I understood how kind of slippery serpents and policy wonks work, and how to work with them, and thought that it'd be best if I kind of elevated myself without degenerating anything that's been going on, to actually engage the authorities at their level. Create a platform for conversation, at least, to start a debate, to kind of move the issues forward in a productive way, rather than it being a kind of belligerent, combative style between two sides. And that's really what I tried to do, quite clearly, as part of that process of engagement, especially with Paddy Tipping. It became apparent that one of the things that the authorities did not have here in Nottingham, and probably true in other areas as well, is that they didn't have a single point of contact, or, you know, a group that they could go to engage as well. So, you know, they were getting it, if you like, from, you know, multitude of angles. So, you know, in discussion with some guys, you know, that we were in touch with, and Mickey was, one of the key drivers in that, we created this thing called the Nottingham CSA Enquiry Action Group, because at that stage it was about Nottingham City and it was about an independent inquiry. Brought together some people of survivors, brought together whistleblowers, brought together the supporters, you know, and started with that sort of credence behind us to really move the engagement with the authorities forward. And as it's turned out, we've done that, and we've also broadened the scope of the, of the group, because, we now talk about Nottingham and its shire, and we've gone beyond just an independent inquiry, because we've, taken, the group to Godard's door, to engage direct with them, but also, looking at some of the broader issues, and the one which is, I think has got my attention right now, and I think is something really valuable that we can do for survivors here in Nottingham, is to ensure that those people within the criminal justice system are, truly aware and an understanding of the perspective from which survivors come, and so that they're treated appropriately. As they go through that criminal justice system. And what I'm trying to do specifically is to unpack it, because it is a complicated process. It isn't particularly clear. People don't know what to expect and what expectations they should have of it. And so if I can, unpack that a bit by engaging with the CPS here in Nottingham, if I can unpack it by engaging with the police here in Nottingham, to try and get some clarity into that, so we can let survivors know, because there are two things which are running concurrently, connected but separated. I know it's a kind of conflated statement, but, you do have Godard and the independent inquiry, which is ongoing now. And of course, you've still got the ongoing police investigations, and the two are not necessarily directly linked.
Okay, thanks for that, David. There's quite a burning question with a lot of people, especially when they look at the mainstream media, I'd have thought. So my question to you really is, could you kind of break down with your understanding of how the Godard inquiry is structured?
Yeah, I think the Godard inquiry, having done many inquiries myself in my history, from gunshot wound to unexpected deaths of soldiers to, people nicking money out of the officers' mess till.
Wasn't me, David, wasn't me.
I know. But I think the Godard inquiry is structured, right for what it intends to do. I mean, there are some concerns about the people that they've got on it, because they're all academics, and I think I come at this from a point of view that I'm not sure that survivors need any more kind of academic research into institutionalized child sexual abuse. I think what they want is action, and it surprises me that there isn't a kind of investigative capability on the panel. But notwithstanding that, they've selected their panel. They've taken a couple of times to get its chair. It's moved from a panel inquiry to a full-blown independent inquiry under the Act of 2005, which gives it quite substantial powers, and the power to compel is a very powerful one, to compel witnesses to come forward. So I think the inquiry is beginning to get, the teeth that it needs. I've noticed that it's advertised for investigators, which is a good thing. It's advertised for academics as well. It's got a victims panel, and you heard Chris talk about that earlier. And I think probably what people don't or haven't picked up on yet is that it's now also got a survivors forum. And when we met with the Godard, one of the things we said to them is that there is concern amongst survivors that, there are some who wanted to kind of control the inquiry. Well, that ain't going to happen. And there's no way that this was going to be a survivor, led inquiry. This was a public inquiry, because the public have been failed just as much as the survivors have, in my view, because for years, the abuse has been kept from their sight. They expect the authorities, when children go into the care of the state, for those authorities to keep the children safe, and they pay their taxes, and they have an expectation of public servants to do their job. Clearly, the public have been failed in that responsibility by those authorities. So that's why it's a public inquiry. But we said to the Godard Secretariat, listen, is there a way that perhaps we can, create a forum for which that, they receive updates, they can engage, they can feed into. And we were thinking about it linking into the victims support and consultative panel. Hey, it's happened. They've now got a forum. And actually, I would strongly encourage all survivors to get back onto the IICSA website, and register to become part of that forum.
Can I just jump in there? Sorry, David. This forum, I wasn't aware of this, and I don't think many other people will be. Who initiated this forum?
Let's give the credit to the inquiry. The inquiry have now established a survivors forum.
By whom, though?
They may have been prompted. Somebody may have suggested it as a good idea, but let's not worry about that. It is a good idea.
Yeah.
It's there now. It's on the website. There is an address that survivors can register for. I've chucked it out on the local Facebook social media forum here in Nottingham, and people can register. They will, get regular updates, and the intent is that forum will meet 4 times a year, so that survivors can directly convey their, concerns, etc., about how the inquiry is going broadly, to the inquiry. It's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, going back to the Nottingham situation, a lot of people aren't aware that we were actually promised a public inquiry, which was agreed by the police and the crime commissioner, Paddy Tipping. And, lo and behold, you going on July the 1st to see Alison Machalska of the City Council, who's got a history of her own in Baby F on Humberside, if anyone wants to Google that, and to meet someone from the County Council whose name I've actually forgotten, and Superintendent Helen Chamberlain from Nottinghamshire Police. I mean, I actually have concerns about the police being involved, because they've been sharing statements and people's evidence with the council. My beliefs are that they're sharing evidence so they can destroy records. But taking it back to the meeting that you had, I mean, we were sold out, David, and yeah.
Let me just put I will always balance everything. Let's be very clear. We had engaged with Paddy Tipping, who had clearly been talking to the chief executives of the councils, and it was clear that we had made significant strides in getting an acceptance that there would be an inquiry here in Nottingham, and an independent inquiry. The difficulty was, of course, is that until we sat down and talked to Nottingham, the expectation that we and to be fair, Paddy Tipping had, so we're on the same kind of page there, was that it would be one where they would engage survivors, because that's what we've been asking for. One where any terms of reference that were to be written for it and the structure of it would be discussed with survivors. Clearly, when we met with the councils, they had retreated behind their well-practiced, well-rehearsed insurance company and lawyer guidance, which was we will do nothing until the police operations Daybreak and series had been completed. And of course, that then brought us into this direct issue that we have with that particular legal advice. I mean, it's the same legal advice that stays and has continued to stay a class action from Beechwood survivors against Nottingham City Council. And actually, it was what we challenged by saying, well, hang on, the Leveson inquiry very clearly gave a precedent for an inquiry to take place, which didn't prejudice ongoing operations. And of course, it's the same issue that Godard herself has got to get through when she has her inquiry, and it starts to take evidence, that they do have to be mindful of the potential prejudice to ongoing operations. So that doesn't mean to say it can't happen, but it just they have to be mindful. Now, she's got a very clear way that she's going to cut through that, which is good news for survivors, which is she's going to hear the survivors. She wants to hear every single one of them in a kind of listening phase in private. Anything that comes out of that, in terms of criminality that needs to be investigated, well, she's got a bunch of lawyers, quite a big bunch of lawyers, who will extract where necessary, engage with the specific survivor, and then make sure that the appropriate police force, has it, to take forward. That's got to, that is how she's going to get through the prejudice, and how to make sure that any new evidence that comes forward, or collaborative evidence for existing cases, is fed into the police investigations.
David,
but the concern about Daybreak and Xeris and relying on the fact that they're not going to do an inquiry until it ends is because it's become almost a never-ending police operation. When it was just Beechwood, it was defined in both time and boundary. Since then, it's become open-ended, and therefore we argue the situation has changed, because Daybreak now is Nottingham City, in simplistic terms, and Xeris is Nottinghamshire in simplistic terms, and there is no end to this, and every time we generate more survivors to come forward by what we've been doing and making people aware of it, the police operations continue to push out further into the distance.
Yeah, I mean, we have a unique situation in Nottingham, for those who are not aware, of a strategic partnership between the two councils and the police. And the police, they have massive failings. I hate to bang on about my stuff, but there's a current investigation into my 2003 allegations that's about to get drawn to a close, and hopefully we'll get a good result out of that, which will clearly show that they've took evidence in the past and failed to act.
I think, Mickey, we should be kind of comfortable in the fact that whilst we don't know all the lines of inquiry from Godard, what was clear when we met with her secretariat, and of course we met with them because Nottingham councils had put a brick wall up, and I just said, well, if you're going to put a brick wall up, we'll go round you, or we'll go over you, and we'll go to somebody far more important, i.e. the inquiry itself. And we'll hold a neon sign over the city so that the Godard inquiry can follow the trail, which is what we've done, and therefore actually whatever the councils want to say to me is pretty irrelevant, because Godard's inquiry will do the business and hold them to account. But I think, to be fair, the police are going to find this hugely uncomfortable, because why I said they were separate but they're kind of joined is that Godard will, as part of her inquiry, and it was very clear on this, along with, other issues such as the Catholic Church was very clearly on their radar, Islington was very clearly on their radar, the self-referral of complaints system was very clearly on their radar, and certainly was after our meeting. And what was also clearly on their radar was the fact that police investigations of the past have not been particularly well done. And I think a lot of survivors will point to, issues with police failings in the past. I mean, some will still talk about police failings today, and indeed that's one of the reasons why, we've asked to meet with the PCC towards the end of this month to bring those to his attention. But the police are going to have to go through, it's going to be uncomfortable ground, and I'm sure they're feeling uncomfortable. If that's, too soft a word, I'm sorry, but they're feeling more than uncomfortable, having to go over ground that they should have secured the first time round. And inevitably, they will come under criticism from the Godard inquiry for their failings in the past. And I think we should welcome that, because it's only by getting an understanding of what went wrong in the past and being upfront about it can we make sure that actually going forward we get these things put right.
Yeah, I mean, my issues with Nottinghamshire Police, and I do get frustrated when you say to me, well, we'll add that to the Godard inquiry, we'll add it to the Godard inquiry, and as a survivor, it's hard to accept, but you know what? I know
that, Mickey, but where you come from, of course, is we started this inquiry, this kind of campaign to get an independent inquiry, and I think we've taken it to the Godard's door, and as I said, we're holding that big neon sign over it, over the city and its shire now, saying, "Oi, come here." And there was an expectation that, as they said to us, late autumn, we will find out whether Nottingham will become, a case study. And from what I can see, and what I've heard, there is absolutely no reason why she wouldn't come here, because it has all of the elements of the institutional child abuse, not just, because it spanned time, but it also spanned every single children's home. It wasn't just a single place. It spans, all types of abuse, including trafficking. And this was by council employees, and it also has got elements of, poor police work in the past, and it has got, elements of people who should have known better, the authorities, failing to do anything about it when they knew. And we're not talking about just the other year. We're talking about, back in the 90s they knew about this and did nothing about it. They knew about it in 2000 and did nothing about it. I mean, one of their previous heads of children's services was forced to resign, and they still did nothing about it. And let's not forget that the head of children's services went on to be a chief executive of a county council. Yep. So it seems that, there's a track record amongst some of these people that, if you fail children, you get promoted. And from where I come from, back to, you asked the question about how did I get engaged. I think one thing that really has irked me, having come out of the military, after 35 years, is that there are oiks, in places like the council who are earning more than a general, who don't understand the word leadership or integrity.
But yeah, the title, yeah.
And we saw that specifically, Mickey, did we not, when we went to, your court case where they tried to close you down, from protesting, whilst I don't necessarily agree with everything you said, or what I will agree with is you've got a right to say it. For God's sake, that's what I fought for, was the freedom of right, and freedom of speech and law, the rule of law and democracy in this country. Not for the councils to say, "Oh, we don't like what you're saying, so we're going to put an injunction on you." And then, of course, when we went to court, we found that they didn't bring the injunction themselves. These are the leaders of the council, the chief executive, the council leader, and the head of children's services. They hid behind the corporate name. And suddenly it was some strange being called Nottingham City Council that was bringing a case. I mean, it couldn't have been more George Orwellian if you tried. Thankfully, we got through that, and the injunctions lifted. And but it just gives you an example of the kind of leadership. And as I said to the judge, this sort of leadership I don't understand. Follow me, I'm right behind you. And people who are not prepared to do the right thing, to me, do not deserve to be in positions of authority. They come into the public sector to serve the public, to serve the nation, the state, and people have an expectation that they will do the right thing, and for that they will be appropriately rewarded. But if they're not doing the right thing, then, like the bankers, like, anybody else that fiddles the system, you should get out, turn left, march. David,
can I take you back just a little bit on something that you mentioned regarding the forum, please? Someone in the chat rooms asked, how did they access the forum? That was
by going onto the IICSA website. I think it's a .org website, so, what we'll do, that will make it www.iicsa.org. And on there you will find the homepage, and it will take you to the Survivors Forum.
Great.
And you can then sign up on that Survivors Forum. And my understanding is that forum will send out regular newsletters or emails, however they'll do it, probably newsletters, to keep people aware of what's going on. That it will tell people where the listening phases will be, for example, because they're going to be regional.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they will have meetings. I think they said that they intended to have a kind of forum meet 4 times a year. Well, that's great. I mean, survivors can go down there, wherever they hold these forums, and whilst it won't specifically deal with a specific case or their specific case, they'll be able to get an insight into how it's going more broadly. And if they have any concerns, be able to articulate that. That's got to be a good thing.
Cheers, David.
But to be honest, I think actually, if I had a conversation now with the police, and and I said we're going to meet later with them, it's a similar sort of process that I would be recommending to Nottinghamshire Constabulary. That perhaps if they had established some sort of forum at the beginning, they wouldn't be saying to survivors, keep off social media, because that isolates them, and it doesn't actually begin to build any confidence in the system. And I've said this to the CPS. Why would you trust, a system which so fundamentally failed you the first time round? And now the survivors are being asked to trust it without question. And I said that ain't going to happen. People are always going to be suspicious. But, the way to build trust is openness, and not try to hide anything and to engage them. And, and I'd be saying exactly the same to Nottinghamshire Police. I think there's still a role for a kind of forum group because the police operations are ongoing. People will want to know, and they may not want people to get together, but actually, people need the confidence to know that if they come forward with with their evidence, with their stories, with their experiences, they will be listened to, and the police will act. I mean, let's not forget what the corporate role of the police is: prevent and detect crime. And if they have an allegation of a crime that's been committed, they have a responsibility to go and investigate.
Yeah, I mean. 40 years being on this planet, in all fairness, I've never, and I can't remember ever, the distrust of the police these days. It just seems to be getting worse and worse for them. I know there's a couple of good people out there, but,
my view of this, a lot of the coppers are people that, Mickey and I served alongside. And a lot of them are ex-squaddies that have gone into the police force. So the rank and file I don't have an issue with. I mean, yes, I have an issue with the way that their leadership process works, but that's an esoteric discussion I can have with them. There is no doubt that they need to build confidence, and it's about how do they build that confidence. Okay,
I've got another question for you. Sorry, David, got another question for you. Someone in the chat room asks specifically, how can you verify everything that you say? And if so, how would someone go about verifying it for themselves?
In what other?
I mean, literally.
Are they trying to verify that I've said?
Yeah, I mean, how can someone go and follow what you say and get the information? So basically, they could save it for themselves. Maybe.
Give you an example of where perhaps it kind of works. Kaz, and I think we all know Kaz. Talked to me a couple of weeks ago and about a couple of issues, and and she was being angry and on social media, and absolutely right, and I get that. But what I suggested to her is that there are processes in place, and I get that people are hugely suspicious, but you've got to use those processes, and I think since then, and she's now engaged the PCC in her region. She's now got a meeting with the police. She's now got a meeting with the by changing that approach and starting to kind of work with people. I think rather than working against people, you tend to be able to move the situation forward. And that's what I'm trying to do. And actually get the authorities to recognise the responsibility, realise that actually this isn't a combative thing, this is not us against them, and actually get them to come across and start working with survivors to get to the same goal. And that goal, and I think everybody, agrees with it, is threefold. One is the cathartic experience. One is the cathartic experience that survivors need in order to get it on. Secondly is the justice that they rightly deserve to finally get, the truth heard and the reasons, out there. And thirdly, and importantly, to make sure this doesn't ever happen again. Not just the abuse, but also that those in positions of authority understand that actually, and I don't want to talk for the public, but, the public have a right to expect that those positions of authority in the councils whom are getting paid really well act in the interest of the people. Yeah,
brilliant. Excellent. So what do you see coming up for the future now? Because a lot's happened in Nottingham, which is affected. Hence to be on time. I mean, what do you predict in the future? It's probably not fair to say predict, but what would you like to see, David?
I'd like to see. In the next couple of weeks, I would like to see Godard's inquiry announce the regional listening phases, which I think we will make a lot of noise on, and certainly all the media here in Nottingham are waiting for that because we've told them about it, and that inevitably will generate even more survivors to come forward, which is a good thing, which will mean the police will have to do even more investigations, which will bring even more people to account for what they did to children in the past, and that could be a good thing. And the second thing that I'm waiting for Godard to announce is that Nottingham will be a case study, and that she will be coming with her inquiry, hot foot up to Nottingham, and she will hold her inquiry here, and some very senior people in the councils will be brought in at the start, and will start at the top, and they'll ask the simple questions. What did you know? When did you know about it? And what did you do about it? And then as we get through the councils, we'll then get to the police, and we'll begin to unravel whether people in authority of whichever department acted by omission, in which case it's incompetence, or whether they acted by commission, in which case it's criminal. Actually, I would be going after, at the end of all that, I hope that Godard makes a recommendation that those people that were responsible for this and who failed in their duty, their private wealth, their pensions should be absolutely attacked, and all the money, as much money can be recovered to pay for the bloody costs of the compensation and the court cases and the inquiries, because I don't see why the UK taxpayer should have to pick up for the incompetence of people in authority.
Brilliant. I've got quite an interesting question. Sorry, you're breaking up a bit there, David.
I don't think the latter will happen, but I certainly hope Godard will come and certainly will get the listening phases, and will continue to get more survivors coming forward because to do so.
I mean, a lot of people would expect a lot more than just their pensions and everything else going, obviously, because they've been that affected.
If it's criminal, then absolutely. But of course, a lot of this won't be criminal. These will be, failure in post, which is probably, if I'm honest, more administrative rather than criminal. And that's where you'll have the difficulty. How do you hold to account a head of something for failing to do something?
That's correct. In my opinion, yeah. Have we got an interesting question here, Dave? There's a question here. It's basically how can we expect to change the police mindset when they're all Freemasons? Like, for example, members of the Blue Lodge, and you
won't get me going on the conspiratorial stuff. I mean, let me put this into perspective. I am on one hand, and this is personal view. On one hand, the good news about the kind of suspicions about Westminster and the establishment and the bubble down there and all the rest of it. One of the good things that it brought in is greater awareness and the media into the issue of child sexual abuse. So the fact that the Westminster dimension has raised the overall profile has been a good thing. That is actually where the Godard inquiry initially started, and it's only been expanded across the piece. The bad thing, of course, is that, if the Westminster thing is shown to be, let's say not what people have said it is, then of course it potentially casts doubt on actually what the real issue is, and the real issue is the abuse of kids in homes out in the sticks, industrial scale abuse, and in Nottingham, 300 people plus coming forward with allegations of abuse. That's even without questioning those that have yet to come forward. And the estimates are, those that do come forward are about 40% of the total. So, I could almost see that doubling, plus some, finally, when they get to here. That level of industrial abuse actually, to me, is far more of a story than some MP in the 70s who had a homosexual affair with a bloody rent boy who would have been, maybe 17 and illegal back then, but in today's law is not illegal. So we do need to be careful that we don't allow, conspiratorial stories to degrade the very real story of abuse, because it'd be quick to kind of kill the conspiracy stories, and with that, of course, people will quickly think, well, then there's nothing in the abuse as well, and that would be entirely wrong.
So basically, what you're saying there, David, is let's focus on where we know there's meat on the bones, rather than waste our resources.
Let's focus on the real issue. And I constantly, and I know Joe Heath down in Leicester gets it from me every now and again, and anybody that comes on anywhere near me and starts to bring, a broader conspiratorial aspect to it, I kind of say to them, just back off. Let us keep this very focused on the issue. The issue right now is children in the care of the state were abused. Sexually, physically, emotionally. Now, they were abused. It was allowed to go on. The police didn't properly investigate. People knew, let's get to the bottom of that and find out the truth. Now, as that investigations take place, maybe other things will come out. But don't start with those other things because, they are, sensational. Let's keep it to the core business. And if anything else comes out, then let's deal with it at the time.
Okay. I'm just going to take a little bit onto regarding the news blackouts, which, as I think we're all aware, has happened to some extent.
You mean Christopher Metcalf?
Well, I was going to use Christopher Metcalf as one example, just to get your take on that.
So I'm comfortable talking about that.
Okay.
It is a question, and we put that question, and it is part of the agenda for discussion with the PCC as to exactly what was going on here. Why did it require a journalist to expose the fact that this particular individual had been charged with child sexual abuse offences committed between 82 and 87?
Yeah.
And it's the right question to ask. I think we need to be careful before we come to any prejudged conclusion that there is a own policy. But of course, people who are suspicious, and I absolutely get where their suspicion comes from and their lack of confidence, and this just plays into that, will come from and saying, there's a news, as you just said, there's a news blackout. Why? Why are you keeping this quiet? Actually, survivors will come forward when they see real evidence that progress is being made, that people are being held to account. And actually, I will be saying to the PCC for him to discuss with the police, and we've even invited the police to come along to that meeting on the 20th, and Mickey will be there amongst others. You should not be trying to hide this. It goes back to that point I said earlier. The only way to build confidence with survivors who were so dreadfully let down in the past is now to be as open and as honest as you can be. And every time that you fail to do that, whether by intent or by bad practice or somebody failing, actually does you more harm than good. So we will be asking, is this a policy? I desperately hope it's not, and it was an omission and an oversight. And that the police learned that actually they need to be open and honest and transparent with these, as transparent as they get. I get that they're not going to conduct police operations in the public gaze. They're not social workers, they're policemen, and they will investigate. But they've got to be as open as they can be. And people like Chris Metcalf, and it happened to be a journalist that announces he's been charged, doesn't help.
No, I have to say, hand on heart, that without Nick Frame from the Mansfield Chad newspaper, we may not have had as many survivors come forward as we have from.
Yeah, I think Nick Frame has done a sterling job in following and supporting the story. I mean, that's one of the things that when we talked about forming the group, and getting organised. Is part of it. It's about having the group, having a focus, maintaining that focus about what it is we want to achieve, bringing other people into it so that it gives you a greater base and credibility to engage. But it's also about having, consciousness of the media campaign, and what are the issues that you're going to engage on, and not just shouting. So people like Nick Frame have been hugely useful, and we've built up a really positive relationship with him, so we can be as open with him as to give him, because he's a journalist at the end of the day. He's not our PR agency, but it's a story, and it's a story of public interest. Likewise, Philip Brewster with ITN Local, has been a huge supporter, and both of them have actually, from a journalist point of view, standing back slightly, they've both been very good in the way that they've engaged survivors. They haven't just been out there for, a tabloid headline. And they have kind of tried to build relationships so they can build the confidence of survivors and get their trust. So it is part of that business, build the team, build the, strategy, and then take it forward together as a team, not, a bunch of individuals.
Cheers, David. What we're going to do now anyway is come to that time where we're going to have a tune, bit of a break, and we'll come straight back to you, David. This next tune is it was put to me personally by a good friend of mine who's very, very good friends with the band. It's by The Force, and the song is called Game.
Seek the truth in the eyes of our children. Nothing can hide their despair. There is no way for us to regain their innocence. We can search, but we know it's not there. But when you play your games, you must understand there is a price so high. The time is in your hands. You say you won, but I say you're wrong. The loss of a child is no victory for anyone. Same time every morning, there's a feeling that the world will start over again, and you're gonna get on with your life.
Welcome back, everybody. That was quite interesting feedback there, what Dave was saying in the chat room. All warranted, of course. A little bit too condensed the amount of time, really, to put all that to somebody. What I can say about David is he has got a lot of results. His outlook, love it or hate it, end of the day, still got results. I did like a lot of the questions. It was going a bit too fast. But anyway, we've got another guest we're bringing in. He's called Nigel O'Mara. You there, Nigel?
Yeah, I'm here. Good evening, everyone.
Do you want to introduce yourself, Nigel? Because I know you've been doing quite a bit of work, really, haven't you, in the background? Well, I know you've been working as an activist regarding child abuse issues since the early 80s, mid-80s?
Since the mid-80s, yeah, since 1986. Yep. I helped set up Survivors UK, the first helpline for male survivors ever in the UK. And since then I've been supporting survivors one way or another and counselling and doing things like that.
Excellent. You've also been working on supporting survivors, haven't you, as well?
That's right. I've always had the view that you've got to try and do something about it as well, not just campaign about it. Basically, what happened in February this year when I was in Parliament speaking about this issue, the next speaker on the stage was John Mann MP, and he brought up the subject of survivors in Nottingham, which is where I was living, and saying that there was a problem with homelessness. And then when I got together with Mickey and David and Nottingham CSA Enquiry Action Group as well, that was also something that was brought up very much. So I decided to do something about it and got a friendly landlord to give me a house and opened a hostel for male survivors.
And correct me if I'm wrong, this is probably one of the first in this country.
It's the first in the country.
Excellent. That's a start. Needed. Absolutely. Well, looking at what we've kind of covered over this evening anyway, there's too many survivors. I mean, going off something that David said early on as well is, if it happens to one person. Well,
this is the way that Godard actually reckoned it. You only got half the story there. The 300,000 is the submissions they're expecting. They reckon that to be 1/10 of the amount of victims.
Right.
So the victims are 3 million.
Well, I'd add to that personally, Nigel, with my findings over the last 2 years.
I'd like to come in at this point and say that when I came into this, there was 42 survivors that was known to Operation Daybreak, which was the first inquiry in Nottingham. And through what we have done, because a campaign was started by some friends of mine on my behalf. This is not about Mickey Summers. There's no I in we, and this is how we operate in Nottingham. We are a group of people that are standing up and being counted. And I first met Nigel earlier in the year, as he said, we was at Parliament at a CSA meeting. And really and truthfully, I'd like you to give a bit of your side of what you've seen along this journey, and maybe give your views on the stuff that was put out by David and by Chris Tuck.
Yeah, please do, Nigel.
Yeah, well, I was very interested to hear Chris talk about the way that the structure of the inquiry is going and how positive she was about it. I share her positivity in quite a lot of ways because I think it's very important. It's taken a long time to get this inquiry, a really long time, more time for some of us than people realise. It's taken decades. Yeah. And now we've got this inquiry. It's so important that if we don't engage with it, it can't work. It can only work if survivors come forward and engage absolutely fully with the inquiry, because that means that they will get that information. What they do with it, we can only hope that they do the right thing. But if we don't give it to them, then they can't do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I look back at my involvement in all of this, and I've raised the profile a little bit with some of the things that I've done, but I have to say that I have not done it on my own. A lot of stuff that's connected to my case, I have to thank people like Mandy Copeland,
But none of us have done it on our own, Mickey. It's been a collective effort across the whole country. People have been stepping forward, stepping up to the plate, making themselves known, putting themselves in the spotlight. And that's a good thing, because it was needed, because it's meant that the people have been able to get together, and make the establishment sit up and listen.
Nigel, you mentioned where the 300,000 was only a tenth.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously looking at what's happened, obviously around with Nottingham and all the people involved. I mean, because there's so many people that has been made aware to me who have been helping this, and they're all around the country. It's not just Nottingham.
No, it's not just Nottingham. It's everywhere.
Yeah, and Nottingham.
And it's not just this country either.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm well aware of that.
It's in Belgium. It's in Italy. It's in Holland, and there are organisations there as well.
So if there's all those survivors out there still, I mean, I think the time is now. It's easy for me to say not being a survivor of this, obviously. The time, how would these people, maybe if they get to where, if they listen tonight, or if they hear a podcast, or they pick up something that's been done, you know, what other people have been involved with, how would they include themselves, you know? I mean, because I think it's worth kind of mentioning that there's a lot of fear with you know, adults today who survived what they went through as children, you know, and that's obviously, I mean, the PTSD, I mean, it's been proven.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet been hidden for years before that's been proven. I think that's a milestone, because it shows that it physically and mentally affects years and decades later with people. I mean, how would someone get involved in order to be, I mean, I'll give you a scenario. As I mentioned, nobody wants to really put their name or face to anything. How could someone be inclusive still with like what's happening now? I mean, what outlets is it for people to get involved with how things are moving now?
With the inquiry, or with how things are moving with
everything, really. It's just to get justice at the end of the day in some form or another, I suppose.
Well, if people want to get involved in the inquiry, which is the best thing they can do,
yeah.
If they want to give evidence to the inquiry, they can do that in several ways. They can record their inquiry if they wish themselves, and then send it to them, or they can do it by email, or they can do it by some kind of a video recording of themselves, or they can do it by writing, or they can do it in person. In any way you want to give evidence to this inquiry, they are facilitating you to be able to do so.
So you could do it anonymously, for example?
Yes, absolutely.
So that facility is definitely there then within the Godard inquiry?
That facility is there.
Excellent. I wasn't sure, you see. I just think it's worth mentioning that.
And it's not only people who've been abused who need to come forward to the inquiry. It's also people who saw it, who saw what was going on, and who felt unable to do anything about it at the time.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because at the end of the day, what is going to happen is that the people who should have done something and didn't because they were too scared, if they still don't come forward, they're going to be seen to have been complicit.
Yeah.
And that's not a good place to be.
Well, it's now or never in that sense.
It's now or never in that sense,
You've got to do it. Yeah. I mean, I do feel like it's kind of a bit of a driving force for me anyway, I suppose.
So I would urge anybody out there who has any knowledge of any abuse historically in children's homes to come forward now, while they've got the chance.
Yeah, and try and keep this locally.
Because the inquiry will not miss them.
Yeah, I mean, locally from where we are in Nottingham, you know, if anyone's listening that is from Nottingham, whether you know of things that happened in children's homes, in schools, in youth clubs, churches, you know, you name it. These are all establishment places that are covered by the inquiry, and we already know that in Nottingham, we've established, just by my evidence, a paedophile ring at the core of anything to do with children, you know, from school teachers that were dismissed from working in the county. And I'm going to name and shame Jock Bowley. He was a teacher in the county, was sacked for paedophilia and reinstated by the city council shortly thereafter. That stuff was covered in a similar way back in the 60s, but by a thing called a Z list. Now, where they do checks these days, those checks weren't as stringent back then, but there was checks. And the only way you got reinstated was through an insider. And we believe that insider was my alleged rapist, who ended up being the regional director for the East Midlands Social Services. And if it goes to the top there, it goes beyond, you know. And
Must have happened.
It is, as far as we're concerned, speculation, but we've got people that have come to us and said that this is connected to Westminster in Nottingham.
Well, we've got a question in the chat room here, and it's a question that always has me scratching my head. I mean, what's your take, Nigel? I'll even throw mine and help Mickey does with these. With these D notices, I mean, you know, we're going up to, I think the worst case is, the way I read it, is up to 100 years. And the mainstream years is 75 years. And then you do have your 50 years.
They don't apply to Godard.
Sorry, Nigel, please carry on.
They don't apply to Goddard.
No.
How come?
Because she has an exemption.
Where does that exemption come from, Nigel?
The exemption comes from the government. It's been given by the Attorney General. So she has the right to ask for any secret documents, basically, to be presented to the inquiry. They wouldn't be necessarily made open to the public.
Right.
But they would be seen by the inquiry.
Right, see, I mean, I went on a journey a few years ago, really. It was by accident, I hate to say it that way, but let me explain this. I was researching into something, and I ended up looking at the intelligence services. I ended up getting the name of the head of MI5 in the 60s, which doesn't come to 50s, which doesn't come to mind at the moment, who had a little brown book. And these are kind of names, and obviously how espionage was working in the Cold War was coming up, and I was seeing everything seems to go down to child abuse, how it was used as a weapon to bribe, things like this. I mean, I don't mean to like sidetrack, but I think it's quite an important point.
It is an important point, because it was also, it was utilised in that manner.
Yeah.
It was seen as a non-crime.
And this is where we had, I think it was in the mid-60s, I remember, it probably might have been before, that they would have secret courts in them days where it would come out, and obviously they were immune to prosecution because they were under the Secrecy Act, which
That's
obviously
right.
has been extended now, and we have D notices, which I do see is threaded from that over time up to today. So we can't go back because it's national security is the key two words.
Yeah, and that is the key two words. I've quite often thought about this. I don't believe that it can possibly be in the public's interest in any way, shape or form to use the Official Secrets Act to cover up for child abuse.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. It just cannot possibly be feasibly right that it can be excused in that manner. I don't think it can be in the public interest, can it?
Well, I mean, when you look at the D notices, we all know it's. We can look at Leon Britton. I mean, my personal theory is he got the 29-day cancer, and you have to look into what that is. But how can I put it? Well, if they're going to do D notices that last the lifetime and the next generation of the family lifetime, I can understand how people will say there's no hope. If you're not going to start at the top and work your way down to get rid of this cancer, how are we going to get anywhere forward? I mean, I know a few people who are survivors, as you know, Nigel, and I've seen some of them frustrations being posted today, which I do absolutely understand that, and I do agree with them. I have frustrations, but I still have facts as well, which give me the frustrations. You know, it's
yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, when you're talking about faith, then, is the Godard inquiry going to do anything? You know, I totally see that clear as day. But also, I do see what else is happening. I mean, what other kind of...
If you don't trust the Godard inquiry, then where do you go from here?
Yeah, and that, I think, adds to more frustration.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking for survivors saying this. This is just my
It's taken
personal thought.
30 years to get this inquiry, so people aren't going to... it's really important not to let it slip through our fingers.
I mean, there's one thing that I would point out, and I did mention it earlier on, Nigel, that when we met with the Godard team, the policymaker and the secretariat, we had issues that we raised, and they were taken very seriously. So
yeah, they took our issues very seriously when we were at that meeting. Yeah, and so they should.
And out of all the little splinter groups in Nottingham and the county, I feel quite privileged that the group that we started are the ones that they're actually engaging with, and it gives a lot of credence to the panel that we've got, and the people that have put a lot of hard work into this. We started out with protests, but eventually we had to have a platform, and that platform, as much as people do not know, was created by people like yourself and David Hollas, and you can protest all you like all day long, but sooner or later...
Sometimes you've got to sit down and talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the protesting really is effective to the extent where it starts up on the first foot, and then obviously you'll need a long-term plan if you're going to protest, because you have to get in faces.
Well,
To start it off, I mean, you've got to come from a lower level and come from a side angle, which is on their level, I suppose. I've seen it work.
well, as far as I see it, now that the inquiry is up and running, we have to see what the inquiry says first. Otherwise, what's the protest for? To say you want an inquiry? No, because you've already got an inquiry.
Yeah,
If the inquiry is not doing something, then yes, there's a reason for a protest.
I think it's good backing, personally, myself.
But
It sends messages on a local level.
but at least we've got something going now, so it's a case of wait and see as well.
Yeah,
like I said, I got some faith in it.
So, do you think then, Nigel, like what's happening in Nottingham, do you think there'd be like a template, say, for example, if, say, Liverpool or Manchester, would they say, like, would people say liaise with you guys and kind of get a template of how to get results locally? Because you've got to start locally.
We're in touch with a lot of people around the country.
Yeah,
actually,
I'm aware of that. Yeah.
between us. So people do ask us the odd thing here and there, and we do try and liaise and do things. If we found something works in one place, make sure that other people know about it and try and use it, because it's really important that we have some kind of a network going.
Yeah. That's United Against Child Abuse in my book.
And that's not only that's that, but there's also other major groups as well. Again, not only in this country, there are national and international groups.
Yeah, I mean, someone actually made a mention that, this stuff in England just doesn't remain in England about it being international. And, I'm aware of the fact that you're the East Midlands representative for White Flowers, and maybe you could give us a little bit of information on where White Flowers started, because that has an international connection to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely it does. White Flowers started, I was in Bruges at the time. White Flowers started in 1994, and it was a march about the Dutroux case, where some paedophiles have been caught. One paedophile was actually caught with a live girl that he was torturing.
Yeah.
And the backlash from that, when it was found out that he had connections with all sorts of other people who also happened to be found out to be paedophiles, and that opened a big can of worms there. But the White Flowers March was when the people just said they'd had enough, and people from all over that country went to their town halls with white lilies.
Yeah, I mean...
that's why it was called the White Flowers Organisation.
Epic.
The one thing that's really got me, and this is not just me as a survivor, but, if there's nothing more abhorrent in this world, it is child abuse, and people can turn out in their thousands for austerity, yet when it comes to what we're fighting for, albeit in their words, historic, we're fighting for the futures of kids that might find themselves in the very same...
There's nothing historic about child abuse. It's happening now. We have to make sure that we've got the best practice in the future to stop it as much as possible.
And it's people like yourself that's campaigned all these years that are bringing new people on board. I'm relatively new myself, but it's the work that you've done in the past along with countless others, to name but a few: Bill Maloney, Brenda McNamara, Terry Thatcher.
The list goes on. Sue Grosham, Phil Frampton, Liz Davis. The list just goes on and on. There are a lot of really wonderful people out there.
But in terms of the Nottingham MPs, I mean, there's a lot that they could have done. I mean, I will go back to maybe about 18 months ago. I contacted every MP in Nottingham. Not my constituency, not my problem. Well, I always raise this. When they got elected, they're there to represent their constituency. Secondly, they're there to represent Nottingham and to represent the country as a whole. And the country are mortified of what is going on. And really, truthfully, I would ask everyone who's listening to find the names of all the Nottingham MPs and ask them to get behind us.
Well, I've been in the last few months when I've opened this hostel. I've been in contact with quite a few of the local MPs, and at least I'm beginning to now get support from the majority of them. Now I'm now beginning to get support from Graham Allen, from Lillian Greenwood, and from John Mann. So it's moving slowly forward. Yes, it's still going to take time, but sometimes it does. But we're moving forward, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, talking of John Mann, I mean, he keeps appearing in the news about this dossier that he's got. My question would be, if John Mann was on air, would be, well, if there's 500 MPs, why don't you get 500 copies and have them delivered to every MP, and then raise it in open parliament, use parliamentary privilege, right, and out these scumbags?
I think that kind of shows really why that's not happening. I mean, I do remember looking at that footage on TV when they mentioned, what was it, last year now, I think?
Well, he says it's sub judice, which means that the police are they haven't closed their inquiries.
Well, the amount of MPs that left that room, like someone dropped a stink bomb, was unbelievable. There was about 5 or 6 people there. I mean, that's shocking. It'll never go out of my mind, that.
Yeah, it's unforgivable the way the MPs
I mean, MPs who do like raise a voice, they get shut down.
and that's always been the same.
I mean that's, I think, what Mickey's basically saying. How do we break that trend that they've got in that so-called House of Common People? I mean, this is just, it's ridiculous. It's sickening. I mean, we've got to do something ourselves. The people override everything, and we've kind of forgotten that. And like going back again, what's just been said, child abuse unites everybody, whether you're a survivor or not.
Yeah, it does.
Well, anyway, we're coming up to the last few minutes anyway. Nigel, it's great to have you on. We're going to finish off with a really fitting tune by T-Rex, and that tune is called "They're Children of the Revolution." We won't rest until we get justice.
Right, well, thank you very much for everyone who's listened tonight. I'm going to kind of wrap my things up on this. We've got a major issue with Chris Eyre, the Chief Constable of Nottingham, and he's going to be made accountable at the end of the day. Operation Daybreak, as far as I'm concerned, is nothing short of a cover-up of their past failures. The council, all they can do is cover up their past failures. But I might have been silenced for a little while, but very, very soon, Christmas is coming, and so is justice. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to be coming back at them. I'm going to be coming back with a vengeance, because at the end of the day, I've had enough. My case papers were meant to go to the CPS 3 months ago, ready to be signed off. There's corruption in that Nottinghamshire police. They've still got my case papers. They're not with the CPS, and this matter will be getting raised in Parliament very, very soon. As far as I'm concerned, Chris Eyre, your days are numbered, and we're coming for you.
I think it's fair to say as well, that it's not just Chris Eyre of Nottingham Police. It's all chief constables of all police forces all over the country, because they're all implicit in my book. It's the way it works. This wouldn't have got as far as it's got without those key people in key positions covering up. It's that simple. And I'll go a bit further, saying a bit more on that. I think they get the jobs for a good reason, that they're willing to do that. If not, they're implicit themselves maybe in the crimes. That's just a question. It's not a statement. yeah, thanks everyone for listening. In the future, we're looking to bring a lot more to do with corruption anyway. We want to kick off really on something a lot more close to home anyway with Mickey, stuff I've been involved with. Hopefully we'd like to see you again next month, Tuesday, second Tuesday of every month. Thanks to Andy and Sony there. We're happy and proud to be flying the Enemy Within banner. PIR putting up with us. Brilliant. Nigel, have you got any last words there, mate?
Yeah, just thanks everyone for listening. If anyone wants to contact me, I'm on my Facebook page, East Midlands Survivors. And have a good evening.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Yep, I think we've got a few tunes lined up. And Andy, Tony, last words, please.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mickey. And big thank you to David and Chris, who came on earlier. It put out some absolutely tremendous information there. And I'd like to say thank you to all our international listeners. I know we've got Ken and Susie out in Spain, Lorraine over in New York. And final big thank you to Tony Hurst for hosting it tonight, because otherwise we'd have lost you because my internet connection dropped a few minutes ago. Big thanks, Tony.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone. Good show. Brilliant. Brilliant
What was
first
your
show.
view of the whole thing, Tony?
You're welcome. What did I think of it? I thought you'd done really well. I thought it was some good information. Bit controversial there with David's info, but that's how you go, isn't it? You know, you've got your views, they've got theirs. People are entitled to them. Pick the meat from the bones, isn't it, people?
Yeah.
We can't disagree. We'll never get anywhere.
No.
Right. Are you done, Andy? I think
we're done for the night.
We're
okay
done,
then.
Andy.
What we got?
Yeah.
Manic Street Preachers then.
Yep.
Cheers, everyone.
Tony. Good
Cheers.
night.
Hasta la vista.